My family forced me to become an alcoholic from the moment I was born. I mean that literally. My parents are the most feral people I've ever met. From the moment I turned 10, their idea of quality time was teaching me and my older brother Kyle how to handle our liquor like real adults. Every Friday night was dedicated to what my dad liked to refer to as training night. We'd sit around the kitchen table while dad poured shots of tequila and mom cheered us on, timing how long we could go without making a face. If we gagged or coughed, we'd have to do push-ups until our arms gave out. The rule was simple. The family that drinks together stays together. It was the same rule their parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents followed. I thought it was some BS, but my older brother Kyle took to it like a fish to water. By the time he hit 14, he was dad's favorite drinking companion. They'd stay up until 4 a.m. doing beer pong tournaments in our garage, and mom would brag to her friends about how her son could drink grown men under the table. When Kyle started showing up to breakfast with shaking hands, dad just laughed and poured him a beer, calling it hair of the dog. The more Kyle drank, the more love he got. New gaming systems, concert tickets, even a motorcycle for his 16th birthday. Meanwhile, I became the family disappointment by default. Not because I was failing school or getting in trouble, but because I was pulling straight A's, captain of the debate team, working part-time to save for college, all while staying sober. Mom's favorite line was, you know what your problem is? You judge everyone instead of loosening up and having fun. But it was hard to take her seriously when she slurred her words and stumbled into the furniture. I did consider calling authorities, but I was scared because my best friend Jessica had tried to for her own family. And as soon as the social worker left, Jessica's dad covered her in bruises. So I pretty much ruled CPS out as an option after that. But then came the day that changed everything. Kyle's 18th birthday party. He was doubled over on the porch, joking about the sharp pains in his side that had been bothering him for weeks. Probably just need to build more tolerance. He laughed, his skin looking slightly yellow in the porch light. Dad's response? He brought out a bottle of $200 scotch he'd been saving, slapping Kyle on the back. It's nothing a good drink can't fix. I swear I thought he was pranking him. But that's when my mom took out her iPhone and started filming the whole thing for his future kids. That's when I realized if I wanted to survive, I had to play along. I became an actress worthy of an Oscar, fake laughing at their hammered stories and pretending to be hammered when really I was just pouring the wine bottles into plant pots. The saddest part? It worked. I was finally part of the family. Everything changed when I left for Oregon State. My randomly assigned roommate was in alcohol addiction recovery, and through her, I discovered this whole world of people who had fun without poisoning themselves. I joined the campus sober support group, learned about addiction science, and understood that what happened in my house wasn't normal family bonding. It was intergenerational trauma dressed up as tradition. For the first time in my life, I felt clear-headed and genuinely happy. I even started training for marathons, something I never could have done while pretending to be hungover every weekend. And during winter break of sophomore year, I did something extremely crazy and reckless. I decided to come home for the holidays. I really thought that it could be the moment that I break the cycle, to convince my family to dump alcohol once and for all. In the days leading up to it, I did everything I could to make sure it went smoothly. I gathered photos from my sober friends' gatherings, and even picked up alcohol-free beer and alcohol-free champagne. I kept telling myself not to get my hopes up. But as I packed my car, I couldn't stop fantasizing about them all of us finally getting along like a normal family. The second I walked through the door, Dad shoved a beer in my hand. There's our college party girl. When I politely declined, saying I was training for a race, Mom's face went dark. Oh, so you're one of those now? Too good for your own family? The night spiraled from there. When I tried to go to bed early, they followed me to my room with a bottle of tequila. You're not ruining Christmas by being a sanctimonious witch, Mom snarled. What happened next still gives me nightmares. Dad pinned my arms while Mom tried to force the bottle into my mouth. I kept my jaw clenched shut, tears streaming down my face until Dad grabbed my nose to cut off my air. When I finally gasped for breath, Mom poured tequila down my throat. I threw up immediately and they just laughed. She's out of practice. They spent the next hour trying to force more alcohol into me while I fought and screamed. Kyle watched from the doorway, too hammered to help even if he wanted to. I pretended to pass out, and when they finally left, I used my phone to record them through my cracked door, laughing about breaking me back in. I called 911 from my closet. The sirens grew louder, cutting through the night air. Through my closet door, I watched Mom and Dad freeze mid-laugh, their faces shifting from amusement to panic. Mom dropped the tequila bottle and it shattered on the hardwood floor. Did you hear that? Mom's voice went from hammered to sharp in seconds. Dad stumbled to the window, yanking back the curtain. Red and blue lights reflected off his face. Someone called the cops. They both turned toward my room. I stayed perfectly still, phone clutched in my sweaty palm, praying they'd think I was still passed out. My throat burned from the forced alcohol and vomit still clung to my shirt. Check if she's actually unconscious, Dad ordered. You check, Mom shot back. This is your fault for pushing too hard. My fault? You're the one who poured it down her throat. Their argument gave me time to slip out of the closet and position myself on my bed, eyes closed, breathing shallow. Heavy footsteps approached. Dad's hand grabbed my shoulder and shook hard. She's out cold, he announced. The doorbell rang, followed by authoritative knocking. Police! Open up! Mom scrambled for the Febreze, spraying it frantically around the house while kicking broken glass under the couch. Kyle, get down here and act normal. I heard Kyle stumble down the stairs, bumping into walls. Through barely open eyes, I watched him grip the banister, his whole body swaying. His skin had that sickly yellow tint even in the dim hallway light. Stand up straight, Dad hissed, slapping Kyle's back. Remember, you were just having a quiet family evening. The knocking intensified. Police! We need you to open this door. Dad plastered on his husband's smile and opened the door. Two officers stood on our porch, hands resting on their utility belts. Evening, officers. Something wrong? We received a 911 call from this address, the taller officer said, peering past Dad into the house. Report of a disturbance. Must be a mistake, Dad said smoothly. We're just having a quiet family night. That's when I made my entrance. I stumbled out of my room, vomit still streaking my Oregon State hoodie, throat raw and burning. The officer's eyes immediately locked onto me. Miss, are you alright? The female officer asked, stepping forward. Before I could speak, Mom rushed over, wrapping her arm around me. Oh, officers, I'm so sorry. Our daughter's been having some mental health issues since she went to college. She's been acting out. She's been unstable for months, Dad added, his voice tripping with fake concern. We've been trying to get her help, but she refuses. Tonight she had another episode. I tried to speak, but my throat felt like sandpaper. The words came out raspy. They forced alcohol down my throat. Mom's grip tightened on my shoulder. See, she makes up these stories. We found her drinking alone in her room. We think she's having a breakdown. The officers exchanged glances. The male officer addressed me directly. Miss, you need to speak with everyone separately. Can you come outside with Officer Martinez? As I moved toward the door, I saw Kyle wavering between following me and staying with her parents. His hands shook violently, and he kept touching his side where the pain had been bothering him. His loyalty flickered in his bloodshot eyes like a dying light bulb. Outside on the porch, Officer Martinez noticed the vomit on my clothes immediately. What happened tonight? I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers. I have video. They held me down and forced tequila into my mouth. Behind us, through the window, I could see Mom gesturing wildly while Dad spoke to the other officer. She kept pointing at me and shaking her head. Our neighbor, Mrs. Chen, peered through her blinds next door, probably wondering what chaos the family was causing now. Can I see the video? Officer Martinez asked gently. I played the recording. Even through my cracked door, you could clearly hear my parents laughing about breaking me back in, their voices slurred but unmistakable. Officer Martinez's expression hardened. We need to see this, she called to her partner. Mom's shriek pierced the night. That's taken out of context. She's editing things to make us look bad. Where's your warrant? Dad demanded, his friendly salesman act evaporating. You can't just come into our home and accuse us of things based on our mentally ill daughter's illusions. The male officer noticed Kyle slumped against the wall, his skin waxy and yellow even under the porch light. Sir, is your son all right? He appears to be in medical distress. He has the flu, Mom said quickly. Just the flu. Kyle, tell them you're fine. Kyle opened his mouth and closed it. He looked at me, then our parents, then back at me. His silence spoke volumes, but he couldn't bring himself to choose a side. We need paramedics here, Officer Martinez said into a radio. Possible alcohol poisoning and medical emergency. This is ridiculous, Dad said, his voice rising. I golf with Sheriff Patterson every Sunday. This is all a misunderstanding between family members. My daughter's just bitter because we had to cut her off financially. She's always had this holier-than-thou attitude about drinking. While we waited for the paramedics, Mom's fingers flew across her phone. Within minutes, my phone started buzzing with texts from aunts, uncles, and cousins. Traitor. How could you do this to your parents? Your mom says you're having a breakdown. get help. The paramedics arrived and immediately went to examine me. One shined a light down my throat while I explained what happened. The burning sensation made me wince. Chemical burns consistent with forced alcohol consumption, the paramedic told the officers. She needs to be checked at the hospital. She did it to herself, Mom insisted. For attention. She's always been dramatic. Kyle's hand moved to his side again, a grimace crossing his face. The movement didn't go unnoticed by the medical team. Sir, we should examine you as well, a paramedic said to Kyle. He's fine, Dad said firmly, just the flu. But under the bright porch lights, Kyle's condition was impossible to ignore. The yellowing of his skin, the trembling hands, the way he kept touching his side, all classic signs the paramedics recognized immediately. How long have you been experiencing abdominal pain? The paramedic asked Kyle directly. Kyle looked at Dad, then mumbled, a few weeks. It's nothing. You know, Dad said, his tone shifting to casual conversation. Sheriff Patterson and I were just talking about situations like this at poker last week. Families having disagreements that get blown out of proportion. He always says these things are better handled privately. The threat wasn't subtle. Officer Martinez's jaw tightened. Sir, we're going to need everyone to come to the station for formal statements. I'm calling our lawyer, Mom announced. This is harassment. Our daughter is sick, and instead of getting her psychiatric help, you're enabling her delusions. The officers began collecting evidence. They bagged the broken tequila bottle, took photos of my vomit-covered clothes, and documented the scene. Dad watched with clenched fists as they worked, his jaw tight with barely controlled rage. My phone continued buzzing. Mom had sent a group text to the entire extended family. Please pray for us. My name is having another episode and called the police on us. We're heartbroken. She needs mental help but refuses to get it. The responses poured in immediately. Uncle Ray, that ungrateful brat. Aunt Susan, after everything you've done for her, Cousin Mark, some kids don't deserve good parents. At the station, we were separated for questioning. I sat in a small room, throat still burning, while Officer Martinez took my statement. Through the window, I could see a familiar figure rushing through the parking lot. Uncle Tony, Mom's brother. He'd been their drinking buddy for 3 decades and happened to be a lawyer. My client won't be answering any questions, he announced, bursting into the station like he owned it. His breath reeked of whiskey. That's when things took a turn I didn't expect. Uncle Tony produced a folder of documents. My clients have been concerned about their daughter's mental health for years. Here's documentation. Officer Martinez flipped through the papers. I caught glimpses of medical forms, all dated years ago. My heart sank as I recognized them, from when I was 16 and had refused to drink at Thanksgiving. My parents had taken me to a doctor, claiming I was showing antisocial behavior and paranoid delusions about alcohol. These forms indicate a pattern of mental instability, Uncle Tony said smoothly. My clients have been dealing with this for years. They pay for her college, her apartment, everything. And this is how she repays them. My phone buzzed with a text from Kyle. Why couldn't you just pretend for one more night? The betrayal stung worse than the alcohol burns in my throat. Even now, even after watching them force liquor down my throat, he still thought I was the problem. Officer Martinez left to consult with her partner. Through the door, I could hear Mom's voice carrying down the hall. She's always been jealous of Kyle. He's successful, popular, knows how to have fun. She's just bitter and wants to tear our family apart. When Martinez returned, her expression was carefully neutral. The video evidence is concerning, but your parents' lawyers arguing it's taken out of context. Without Kyle's cooperation, it's your word against theirs. What about my throat? The burns? They're claiming you did it to yourself, that you've done things like this before for attention. I thought about Jessica, how her bruises hadn't been enough to keep her safe, how the system had failed her. Now it was failing me too, but in a different way. My parents had learned from families like Jessica's. Don't leave visible bruises. Leave psychological ones instead. Create a paper trail that makes the victim look crazy. We'll need to investigate further, Martinez said. In the meantime, do you have somewhere safe to stay? Safe. The word felt foreign. Home had never been safe, but now my parents have made sure nowhere would be. They'd already started their campaign to turn everyone against me. By morning, I'd be the ungrateful daughter who called the cops on her loving parents, the mentally unstable girl who needed help but refused to get it. My phone lit up with a Facebook notification. Mom had made a public post. Please pray for our family tonight. Our daughter is struggling with mental health issues and addiction. We love her so much but don't know how to help her anymore. She called the police on us tonight after we tried to stop her from drinking alone in her room. Our hearts are breaking. The comments were already pouring in. Family, friends, neighbors, people from their bowling league, all offering prayers and support for my poor parents dealing with such a troubled child. I scrolled through, watching my reputation crumble in real time. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. Mr. Davidson, my dad's golf buddy who worked at the local news station, had commented, "So sorry to hear this, buddy. Let me know if you need anything." By tomorrow, this would be more than just family gossip. Dad was already 3 steps ahead, turning me into the villain of a story where I was the victim. The man who'd pinned my arms while Mom poured poison down my throat would be painted as a concerned father. The woman who'd called me a sanctimonious witch would be the heartbroken mother. The station's fluorescent lights made everything feel surreal as I sat there, watching my life unravel through a phone screen. Officer Martinez had stepped out to make copies of my evidence, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the constant buzz of notifications. Each ping felt like another nail in my coffin. Mom's Facebook post had gone viral in our small community. 67 comments and counting. The building league president offered to organize a prayer circle. Dad's golf buddies were planning a fundraiser for my treatment. Even my high school English teacher had commented about how she'd always sensed something was off. My hands shook as I scrolled through the messages. Then one made me freeze. It was from Benji, the bartender at my parents' favorite watering hole. Kyle's been coming to AA meetings at the church 3 months now. Your parents don't know. Before I could process this bombshell, Uncle Tony burst back into the room, briefcase in hand. He slapped down a stack of papers thick enough to call a small animal. These are your parents' financial records showing they pay your tuition, rent, car insurance, health insurance, even your phone bill. You're completely dependent on them. He pulled out another document. And this is a withdrawal form, already prepared. One signature from them and you're cut off from everything. Is that really what you want? Officer Martinez returned, glancing between us with barely concealed irritation. Sir, you can't threaten a witness. I'm not threatening anyone, Uncle Tony said smoothly. I'm simply explaining the family dynamics to help my niece make an informed decision. My phone buzzed. A text from my roommate. Your mom just friended me on Facebook. She's asking really weird questions about your mental health. What should I do? The walls felt like they were closing in. Mom was already working her angles, trying to turn my support system against me. I showed the text to Martinez, who made a note but looked increasingly overwhelmed by the family drama unfolding. Look, Uncle Tony leaned forward, his whiskey breath making me gag. Your parents are willing to forget this whole misunderstanding. They'll even pay for therapy. Real therapy. Not whatever experimental nonsense you've been doing at college. All you have to do is admit you were confused about what happened tonight. Confused? My voice cracked. They held me down and forced alcohol down my throat. You were hammered, he said simply. Memory plays tricks. Maybe you had a few drinks to calm your nerves about coming home. Things got out of hand and your parents tried to help. These things happen. Officer Martinez's partner knocked and entered. We need to transport the brother to the hospital. His condition is deteriorating. Through the doorway, I caught a glimpse of Kyle being loaded onto a gurney. His skin had taken on a greenish tinge and he was clutching his side. Our eyes met for a brief moment and I saw fear there. Real, raw terror. Kyle! I tried to stand, but Uncle Tony blocked my path. They'll be fine, he said. Just need some fluids. The stress of tonight hasn't helped his flu. But I knew better. I'd researched liver disease extensively after noticing Kyle's symptoms months ago. The jaundice, the abdominal pain, the tremors. He was in serious trouble. Martinez noticed my distress. We'll make sure he gets proper medical attention. His liver is failing. I blurted out. He needs to be evaluated for transplant eligibility. Please tell the doctors to run a full hepatic panel. Uncle Tony's face darkened. Now you're playing doctor? This is exactly the kind of delusional behavior your parents have been dealing with. My phone rang. Dad's contact photo, him holding a beer at last year's 4th of July party, filled the screen. Against my better judgment, I answered, "You happy now?" His voice was ice cold. "Your brother's being taken to the hospital because of the stress you've caused. If anything happens to him, it's on you. He's sick because you've been poisoning him since he was 10. We gave him a family tradition, something to belong to. You're the one who rejected us, who thinks you're better than everyone else." Mom's voice came through in the background. "Tell her about the diary." My blood ran cold. "What diary?" "The one you kept freshman year of high school," Dad said. "Where you wrote about how much you hated us, how you fantasized about running away, how you wished you had different parents. We kept it, in case we ever needed to show people who you really are." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, remembering that diary. I'd hidden it under my mattress, full of typical teenage angst and frustration. Normal stuff any kid writes when they're forced to watch their parents stumble around ground hammered every night, but taken out of context. I need to go, I told Martinez. My brother needs me at the hospital. You're free to go, she said, but I strongly advise against contact with your parents right now. Uncle Tony smirked. She's right. In fact, I'll be advising my clients to seek a restraining order if you come near them for their safety. Outside the station, the December air hit my lungs like tiny needles. I sat in my car, heat blasting, trying to figure out my next move. My phone buzzed with a notification from my bank app. My checking account, which had $3,000 this morning, now showed $47.83. The tuition payment for next semester, gone. The rent money I'd saved, transferred out. Even the $500 emergency fund I hid in a separate savings account had been drained. Everything except what I earned from my part-time job, which was in a different bank. I drove to the hospital in a daze. The emergency room was packed with holiday mishaps, kitchen burns, decoration-related injuries, and more than a few alcohol-induced incidents. I found Kyle's room after convincing a sympathetic nurse that I was his sister. He looked smaller in the hospital bed, IVs running into both arms. The harsh overhead light made his jaundice impossible to ignore. His girlfriend Alexandra sat beside him, her hand protectively over her still flat stomach. You shouldn't be here, she said without looking at me. Your parents said you're having some kind of breakdown. Alex, please, you know that's not true. She finally met my eyes and I saw she'd been crying. Do I? You called the cops on them on Christmas. Kyle's been throwing up blood because of the stress. He's throwing up blood because his liver is failing. The doctor said it's acute gastritis brought on by stress, she countered. Your parents explained everything. How you've been unstable since you went to college, how you joined some weird sobriety cult. I wanted to scream. Even here, even with Kyle dying in front of us, my parents' narrative was winning. Benji told me Kyle's been going to AA meetings. Alexandra's face went white. That's not, he wouldn't. 3 months, I pressed. He's been trying to get sober. Asked him when he wakes up. Get out. Her voice was quiet but firm. Get out before I call security. I left, but not before taking a photo of Kyle's chart hanging on the door. The doctor's notes mentioned elevated liver enzymes and possible cirrhosis, recommending further testing. Nothing about gastritis. In the parking garage, I sat in my car and finally let myself cry. Everything was falling apart faster than I could process. My family had turned against me, my finances were decimated, and my brother was dying while everyone pretended it was my fault. My phone rang. Jessica, I heard what happened, she said without preamble. My mom saw your mom's Facebook post. Jess, I believe you, she interrupted. I know what it's like when parents flip the script, but listen, you need to be careful. My dad called your dad after he saw the post. They were on the phone for an hour. My stomach dropped. What did they talk about? I don't know, but I heard my dad mention something about coordinating stories and protecting family traditions. They're planning something. After we hung up, I drove to the only place I could think of, the 24-hour gym where I trained for marathons. Physical exhaustion had always been my escape, my way of processing trauma. I ran on the treadmill until my legs screamed, trying to outrun the reality of my situation. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with an email from my college roommate. The subject line made my heart sink. I'm worried about you. She forwarded a message from my mom, who had written a 3-page letter about my deteriorating mental health, complete with fabricated incidents and twisted versions of real events. Mom claimed I'd been drinking heavily at school, that I joined a cult-like sobriety group that encouraged members to cut off their families, that I become paranoid and delusional. The worst part was how believable she made it sound. Every lie was wrapped in just enough truth to seem plausible. Yes, I joined a sober support group, but it wasn't a cult. Yes, I've been distant from my family, but not because I was unstable. I crafted a careful response to my roommate, including screenshots of my parents drinking photos from social media, documentation of Kyle's hospital visits, and a link to an article about family alcoholism and gaslighting. But even as I hit send, I wondered if it would be enough. The next morning, I woke up in my car in the gym parking lot. My phone had blown up overnight. 17 missed calls from various relatives, 43 text messages, each one more accusatory than the last, but one message stood out. It was from Dr. Chen, the physician who lived next door to my parents. I saw what happened last night. If you need a medical professional to verify your injuries, I'm willing to help. Your parents have been a danger to themselves and others for years. Hope flickered in my chest. Finally, someone who might corroborate my story. I immediately texted back, arranging to meet her at a coffee shop near the hospital. Dr. Chen looked tired when she arrived, still in her scrubs from a night shift. I've been debating whether to get involved, she admitted, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. But when I saw them dragging Kyle to the car last month after he collapsed in the driveway, and they refused to let me help, I couldn't stay silent anymore. She pulled out her phone, showing me videos she'd taken from her security camera. Multiple incidents of my parents hammered driving, Kyle being carried into the house unconscious, even a clip of my dad threatening a delivery driver who'd commented on his intoxication. I've been documenting things for 2 years, she said. I kept thinking someone else would report it, but everyone just enables them. The whole neighborhood treats it like a joke. We spent an hour going through her evidence. She'd even kept a log of incidents, dates, and times meticulously recorded. It was damning stuff, if anyone would listen. The problem, she said, is that your parents have connections everywhere. The sheriff, the mayor, half the city council. They've spent decades building relationships lubricated by alcohol and money. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Benji. Can't use my regular phone. Your parents just came to the bar. They're meeting with 5 other families. I heard them mention unified front and protecting our way of life. Be careful. Dr. Chen read the message over my shoulder. 5 families? I knew exactly who they meant. The Johnsons, the Patters, the Williamses, the Garcias, and the Thompsons. All families with kids Kyle's and my age. All families who had their own training nights. All families with secrets to protect. They're circling the wagons, I said. Dr. Chen's expression was grim. You've threatened more than just your parents. You've threatened an entire culture of normalized alcoholism. My phone rang. Kyle's number. I answered immediately. You need to stop. His voice was weak, raspy. Whatever you're doing, just stop. Kyle, you're in the hospital with liver failure. I'm fine. The doctors overreacted. Mom and dad explained everything. I've just been stressed about the baby. Kyle, please. Benji told me about the AA meetings. Silence. Then, I don't know what you're talking about. You're confused. Mom's right. You need help. They got to you. No one got to me. I'm just tired of you causing drama. If you really cared about me, you'd apologize and come home. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, feeling like I'd been punched, even from a hospital bed, even dying. Kyle couldn't break free from their hold. Dr. Chen placed a gentle hand on my arm. Addiction isn't just physical. The psychological chains are often stronger. What do I do? Everyone thinks I'm crazy. My own brother won't support me. You survived, she said simply. You document everything, and you wait for the truth to come out. It always does, eventually. But I wasn't sure I could wait. My college fund was gone. My family had turned the entire community against me, and Kyle was getting sicker by the day while everyone pretended it was fine. I spent the rest of the day trying to salvage what I could. My boss at the campus bookstore agreed to give me extra hours when I got back. My academic advisor helped me apply for emergency financial aid. The sober support group started a GoFundMe that raised $500 in the first hour. But for every step forward, my parents pushed me 2 steps back. Mom called my workplace, telling my manager I was mentally unstable and possibly dangerous. Dad contacted my professors, expressing concern about my mental health and suggesting I might need a medical leave. The masterstroke came that evening. I was at a cheap motel, the only place I could afford with my remaining money, when the police knocked on my door. 2 officers I didn't recognize stood outside. We need you to come with us, the older one said. Your parents have filed for an emergency psychiatric hold. They're concerned you might harm yourself or others. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. I'm not suicidal. I'm not dangerous. You're lying. Ma'am, we have statements from multiple family members and community members expressing concern about your behavior. You called 911 making false accusations. You've been harassing your hospitalized brother, and your parents say you've been making threats. None of that is true, but it didn't matter. The paperwork was all in order. Signed by a judge who, I later learned, was in my parents' bowling league. I was handcuffed and placed in the back of the squad car, watching the motel shrink in the rear window. The psychiatric facility was an hour away. During intake, I tried to explain what was really happening. But the more I talked about my parents forcing alcohol down my throat and the community conspiracy to silence me, the more paranoid I sounded. Have you been taking any substances? The intake nurse asked. No, I'm sober. I've been sober for 2 years. Your family says you've been drinking heavily. They're lying. She made a note. Everything I said was twisted. My training for marathons became obsessive exercise behavior. My work with the sober support group became cult involvement. My documentation of Kyle's illness became fixation and stalking. I was placed in a sterile room with another patient who spent the entire night talking to invisible people. No phone, no way to contact anyone who could verify my story. Just me and the growing realization that my parents had won this round. The next morning, a psychiatrist interviewed me. Dr. Patel was young, probably fresh out of residency, and actually seemed to listen. I carefully explained everything, sticking to facts, avoiding anything that might sound paranoid. Your parents have provided quite a bit of documentation, he said, flipping through a thick file, including diary entries where you express hatred toward them. From when I was 15, every teenager writes stuff like that. They also have videos of you pretending to be intoxicated at family gatherings. My heart sank. The Oscar-worthy performances I'd given to fit in were now evidence against me. I was pretending so they'd leave me alone about not drinking. So you were being deceptive? Every truth I told sounded like a symptom. Every explanation sounded like an excuse. I was trapped in a web of my family's making, and the more I struggled, the more entangled I became. There's someone who can verify my story, I said desperately. Dr. Chen, our neighbor. She has security footage. Dr. Patel made a note. We'll look into that. But I could tell from his expression that he'd already made up his mind. I was just another patient with family issues, possibly experiencing a breakdown, definitely in need of supervision. The 72-hour hold felt like 72 years. No news from the outside world. No way to know if Kyle was okay, if my college place was safe, if anyone was fighting for me. Just group therapy sessions where I had to pretend to acknowledge my issues to avoid seeming uncooperative. On the third day, just as I was starting to think I'd be stuck there indefinitely, Dr. Patel called me into his office. His expression was different, confused, maybe even concerned. We spoke with Dr. Chen, he said. She provided some interesting footage. We also received calls from several members of your college support group, your academic advisor, and your employer. Their version of events differ significantly from your family's. Relief flooded through me. So you believe me? I believe there's more to the situation than initially presented. However, your parents remain your medical proxy since you're on their insurance. They're insisting on continued treatment. They can't keep me here if I'm not a danger to myself or others. No, but they can make things difficult. I'm going to recommend discharge, but I strongly suggest you have a plan in place. Somewhere safe to stay, continued therapy, distance from the conflict. He was right. I couldn't go back to the motel. My parents knew where I was staying. I couldn't go to the hospital. They'd probably gotten a restraining order by now. I was effectively homeless, broke, and alone, but I was free. Dr. Patel arranged for a social worker to drive me back to town. During the ride, she handed me my phone, which had been held during my intake. The screen lit up with 3 days worth of messages. Most were from my parents' flying monkeys, telling me to get help, to stop hurting my family, to think about what I was doing to Kyle, but scattered among them were lifelines. Jessica, your parents tried to get my dad to say you were unstable as a kid. He refused. Stay strong. My marathon coach. Your spot on the team is safe. Don't let them break you. Benji, Kyle's been asking for you. He's scared. And most surprisingly, a text from Alexandra. I'm sorry. You were right. Kyle told me everything. He needs you. The social worker dropped me off at the hospital. I practically ran to Kyle's room, terrified of what I might find. The ICU was a different world from the general ward. Quieter, more serious, filled with the constant beep of life-saving machines. Kyle was awake, but barely. Tubes ran everywhere. Oxygen, IVs, monitoring equipment. His skin was the color of old paper, and his eyes had a glassy, unfocused quality. You came, he whispered. Of course I came. Mom and Dad, they brought me beer yesterday. Said it would make me feel better. Tears leaked from the corners of his eyes. I couldn't say no. I never can. Kyle, I'm dying. The words came out matter of fact. The doctors won't say it, but I can feel it. My body's shutting down. I gripped his hand, careful of the IV. We'll get you on the transplant list. There's still hope. Mom and Dad won't consent. They say I just need to tough it out. That our family doesn't believe in taking parts from dead people. The cruelty of it took my breath away. They'd rather watch their son die than admit their family tradition had destroyed his liver. Alexandra sat in the corner, her face puffy from crying. I tried to talk to them. They said if I keep pushing, they'll make sure I'm declared an unfit mother. They can't do that, can't they? Look what they did to you. 3 days in a psych ward because you told the truth. She was right. My parents had shown they destroy anyone who threatened their narrative, even their own children, especially their own children. A nurse entered to check Kyle's vitals. She glanced at the readings and frowned. His numbers aren't good. Has the family made a decision about the transplant evaluation? They're still thinking, Kyle said weakly. The nurse's expression said everything. Time was running out. After she left, Kyle turned to me. I need you to do something. In my apartment, there's a box under the bed. Everything's in there. Recordings from AA meetings, journal entries, medical records I've been hiding. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me. His grip tightened with surprising strength. Promise you'll use it. Don't let them do to others what they did to us. I promised, even as my heart broke. My big brother, who once carried me on his shoulders and taught me to ride a bike, was preparing for a death that didn't have to happen. I left the hospital as visiting hours ended. Kyle's apartment key clutched in my hand. The weight of his trust felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried. As I drove through the dark streets, I realized this wasn't just about saving Kyle anymore. It was about breaking a cycle that had destroyed generations of our family. And if my parents wanted a war, they were about to get one. I stood outside Kyle's apartment building, his key cold in my palm. The December wind cut through my torn Oregon State hoodie as I climbed the stairs to the third floor. Inside, the place smelled like stale beer and desperation. Empty bottles lined every surface, and I found the box exactly where he said it would be. My hands trembled as I opened it. AHF dating back 3 months. Journal entries detailing his attempts to quit, each one ending with Mom and Dad found out, or they showed up at the meeting. Medical records he'd hidden from our parents showing liver enzyme levels that would terrify any doctor. And at the bottom, a USB drive labeled insurance. I plugged it into Kyle's laptop. Video after video loaded. Kyle secretly recording our parents forcing drinks on him when he tried to refuse. Mom pouring beer into his orange juice at breakfast. Dad threatening to kick him out if he embarrassed the family by going to rehab. The final video was from last week. Kyle begging them to let him get help. And Dad responding by smashing his AA chips with a hammer. My phone buzzed. Alexandra. Kyle's asking for you. Hurry. Back at the hospital, I found chaos. Mom and Dad were in Kyle's room with their lawyer. Papers spread across his bed. Kyle looked even worse than before. His breathing labored. Sign here, Mom was saying. Pen pressed into Kyle's shaking hand. Power of attorney. We'll make all your medical decisions. Stop. I burst through the door. Dad's face went purple. Security. This woman has a restraining order. But I was already at Kyle's bedside, shoving the papers away. Kyle, don't sign anything. I have your videos. Everything you documented. Mom lunged for the USB drive in my hand, but Alexandra stepped between us. I called them, she said to me. I couldn't let them do this anymore. 2 security guards appeared, but so did Dr. Chen, who'd been waiting in the hallway. I'm this patient's physician, she lied smoothly. Everyone out except immediate family. We are immediate family, Dad snarled. The patient has requested only his sister remain, Dr. Chen said, checking Kyle's chart. His condition is critical. Please respect his wishes. Uncle Tony started to argue, but Dr. Chen cut him off. Sir, this is a medical emergency. Leave now or I'll have security escort you out. They left, but not before Mom hissed at me. This isn't over. Once alone, Kyle grabbed my hand weakly. Play the videos. For the doctors, for everyone. Dr. Chen called in the hospital's patient advocate and the on-call psychiatrist. Together we watched Kyle's documentation. The psychiatrist's face grew increasingly grim. This is clear evidence of abuse, she said. We need to contact Adult Protective Services immediately. And the transplant evaluation? I asked. We'll expedite it. With proper documentation of forced alcohol consumption, he could qualify despite the addiction. Hope flickered in Kyle's eyes for the first time in years, but I knew our parents wouldn't give up easily. Sure enough, within an hour, the hospital administrator arrived with Uncle Tony and a judge, another golf buddy of Dad's. We have a court order, the administrator said apologetically. The parents retain medical decision-making authority. Based on what? Dr. Chen demanded. Based on their daughter being mentally unstable and manipulating their son, the judge said. I've seen the documentation. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Your Honor, are you aware that you've been playing golf with my father for 15 years? That you attended his birthday party last month where he served alcohol to minors? The judge's face flushed. Young lady, you're bordering on contempt. I'm bordering on the truth, I shot back. How much has my father paid for your campaign contributions? Uncle Tony grabbed for my phone, but I'd already uploaded the video to the cloud. The hospital administrator looked uncomfortable. Perhaps we should review this matter more thoroughly. That's when Jessica's father walked in. My heart sank until I saw his expression. Determined, not threatening. I'm here to provide testimony, he announced, about what really happened when my daughter called CPS years ago about how these families coordinate to silence their children. Behind him came 3 more people, parents from the other training night families, but they weren't here to support my parents. They were here to confess. My son is in rehab, Mrs. Johnson said quietly. Has been for 6 months. I couldn't say anything because she glanced at my parents, who had just stormed back in. Because we all agreed, Mr. Pater's finished. Protect the tradition, but my daughter tried to cull herself last year. She's 15. The room erupted. Dad shouted about betrayal and family loyalty. Mom screamed that they were all liars, jealous of our close-knit family. Uncle Tony threatened lawsuits against everyone, but the dam had broken. Mrs. Garcia pulled out her phone, showing pictures of bruises on her son's arms from when he refused to drink. Mr. Thompson admitted he'd been secretly attending Al-Anon meetings, terrified his wife would find out. The judge, realizing the scope of what he'd walked into, quickly excused himself. The administrator called for additional security and social services. In the chaos, I noticed Kyle's monitor starting to alarm. His breathing had become more labored, his skin taking on a grayish tint. He needs the transplant list now, Dr. Chen said urgently. We're running out of time. I consent, I said. As his sister, you have no authority, Uncle Tony interrupted. Actually, she does. Alexandra stepped forward, holding a document. Kyle and I got married yesterday in the hospital chapel, and I'm designating her as our medical proxy. Mom's scream could probably be heard 3 floors down. You manipulative little— Enough, the psychiatrist stood. I'm placing a psychiatric hold on both parents for evaluation. Their behavior is erratic and potentially dangerous. You can't do that! Dad lunged at her, but security intervened. As my parents were escorted out, still screaming about lawsuits and family betrayal, I saw something break in their eyes. The realization that their control was finally, truly gone. The next hours blurred together. Kyle was placed on the transplant list as a status 1, the highest priority. The other families provided statements to the police about years of forced alcohol consumption and child abuse. Adult Protective Services opened investigations into all 5 families. I sat by Kyle's bed, holding his hand as machines kept him alive. Alexandra sat on his other side, her hand protectively over her belly. I'm sorry, Kyle whispered, for not standing up to them, for letting you fight alone. Don't, I said. Just focus on getting better. The baby, he said to Alexandra. Promise me, no alcohol. Ever. Never, she swore. We're breaking the cycle. Dr. Chen entered with news. We found a match. A liver. Surgery is in 2 hours. Kyle squeezed my hand. If I don't make it, you will. But if I don't, use everything. The videos, the journals, don't let them hurt anyone else. 2 hours later, they wheeled him into surgery. Alexandra and I sat in the waiting room, surrounded by the wreckage of our family. My phone had been buzzing nonstop. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all choosing sides. The community Facebook page had exploded with arguments about family values versus protecting children. Benji texted, your parents just got banned from the bar. Finally, proud of you. Jessica arrived with coffee and sat beside me. My dad's pressing charges, she said, for what happened when I was 15. Others are too. It's destroying everything, I said. No, she corrected. It's revealing what was already destroyed. 8 hours later, the surgeon emerged. The transplant was successful. He's stable. Alexandra and I collapsed into each other, sobbing. Kyle would live. He would get to meet his daughter. He would get a second chance. But the fight wasn't over. Over the next days, as Kyle recovered, the legal battles intensified. My parents, released from their psychiatric hold, hired the best lawyers money could buy. They sued the hospital, the doctors, me, Alexandra, even the other families who'd spoken out. I spent my days shuttling between Kyle's bedside and legal meetings. The campus bookstore had to let me go. I'd missed too much work. My professors granted incomplete grades. My marathon training stopped entirely. But slowly, things shifted. The police investigation uncovered years of documented abuse across all 5 families. The district attorney, who wasn't part of my parents' golf network, filed criminal charges. Child Protective Services removed 3 younger siblings from their homes. Kyle improved daily. The yellow faded from his skin. His hand stopped shaking. For the first time since he was 10, he was truly sober. I want to go to rehab, he told me one morning. After I'm released, 90 days, learn how to live without it. Mom and Dad will— I don't care what they do anymore. His voice was stronger than I heard in years. I'm done living for their approval. Alexandra had been documenting everything for their daughter. So she knows, she explained. So she understands why we don't see your grandparents. The trials began 3 months later. I testified for hours about training nights, forced consumption, the Christmas assault. Kyle testified via video link from rehab. The other family's children told their stories. My parents' defense was predictable. We were ungrateful children destroying a loving family tradition, but the evidence was overwhelming. The videos, the medical records, the witnesses, they were convicted on multiple counts of child endangerment and assault. The sentence was only 2 years, but it was something. The real punishment was the destruction of their reputation, their social network, everything they built on a foundation of alcohol and control. I started back at Oregon State in the fall. My financial aid came through, and I worked 3 jobs to cover the rest. The sober support group welcomed me back with open arms. Kyle graduated from rehab and started attending AA meetings regularly. He got a job at a recovery center, using his story to help others. Alexandra gave birth to a healthy daughter, Sophia, who would never know the taste of alcohol forced down her throat. The 5 families scattered. Some sought help, others relocated, probably to start their toxic traditions elsewhere. The neighborhood felt different, quieter, like a collective hangover was finally lifting. I ran my marathon that spring. My time was terrible. I'd lost months of training, but I crossed the finish line. Jessica cheered from the sidelines. Kyle couldn't make it. He was speaking at an AA convention, but he texted, proud of you. Mom and Dad saw your race announcement in the paper. They're furious you're flaunting your lifestyle. Perfect. We didn't speak to our parents after their release. We moved 2 towns over, started attending a new church, told everyone their children had abandoned them for no reason. Sometimes I hear through the grapevine about their latest narrative. We were substance addicts who falsely accused them, or ungrateful children who destroyed their lives for money. But Kyle was alive. Sophia was healthy. The cycle was broken. On the 2-year anniversary of that Christmas night, I received a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of Kyle holding Sophia at her 2nd birthday party. Sober, smiling, alive. The message read, thank you for fighting when I couldn't. K. I stared at the photo for a long time. We'd lost our parents, our extended family, our childhood home, our inheritance. But Kyle was sober. Sophia would grow up safe. The generational curse ended with us. I typed back, worth it. And it was. Every lost relationship, every legal battle, every sleepless night. Because Kyle was alive and free. Because Sophia would never sit at a kitchen table, 10 years old, learning to drink shots while her parents cheered. The cycle was broken. The price was everything. And I'd pay it again.